Hello, and thank you all very much for taking the time to join today. I hope this conference is adding a lot of value to your learning. Myself, Mahesh, and I work as a partner technology strategist with Microsoft India. You can follow me on Twitter for the slides or some of the samples of what I'm throwing today. And so all these learnings, what I'm going to share it today, literally from my customer experience or customer learning, right? So I picked this topic, which is actually closer to my heart, because I see customers who are coming new to Azure or who are already in Azure, but still they are struggling or learning the art of running their application in a nicer way, right? So all these recommendations or best practices can be improvised or revisited once in a quarter or once in a 6 months to see if there is any gap. So I'm sure that I will be leaving you with a bunch of hyperlinks and best practices and also an assessment. I encourage highly to go and take this assessment with your current workload of Azure and then see where you are standing in the respective scores and other things. With that, so this is broadly agenda of why is being well architected so important for you, why you have to bother about well architected framework as such, and then what is actually Microsoft is doing with this framework for tracking this framework or helping you to track the gaps in your application deployed on Azure. There are 5 pillars which is applicable to any cloud today, and then I'm going to show some demos of using the cost management solution on Azure and also tools, and there are some reports which is readily available. In fact, the Azure Advisor kind of a tools, which is actually free services, you can enable it and see what is the gap in your solution. And also we are going to see last what is the work quality inhibitors, and then see um, how you can actually overcome on that, and also the resources and other thing. Why is being well architected so important for you, right? Let's if you step back and see, maybe let's begin by discussing why being well architected is more critical than ever, right? Are you well architected? um, do you know how far, but when we deeper dive into this 5 pillars of this well architected, when we meet the customer and then ask about some of this question about this well architected coverage, then we'll see they're not in that state of expectation. It's not quite the same, I see. There is always an opportunities to improve process to review, and also there is an address to close the gap. Then why WAF, right? So the WAF or a well-architected framework will mainly help you to build and deploy faster and also lower or mitigate risk very quicker way, and identify the potential flaws in your application by enabling the monitors and some of those alerts, and make the informed decisions, right? Instead of over provisioning at some place, just go by the metrics or value, and then learn the best practices in Azure, and then get the governance on Azure over the period of time. um, well architected solutions enable customer success for sure, right? That's one of the key thing, right? So let's look at the cost optimization can do for you. So you are building a cost conscious organizations that is visible, accountable, and optimized, but you don't know where do you begin, right? So if you look at the screen, there is 23% of over budget or over provisioned, always there in your existing subscription, right? So this survey is coming from 2020 State of Cloud report, which means that 23% is over provisioned, and then 47% of the uh, companies, 47% of the spending is going to happen in next 12 months or a year time. So what can well architected solutions do for your organization, right? Let's look at it. And the second use case, if you see here, they enable the customer success as mentioned, but the 2019 cost mitigation factors, and then some of those data points, you see the encryption, DevSecOps, why it is mandate to have this kind of encryption all enabled, right? So there is definitely there is a cost involved, right? Encryption can be reduced. Encryption has reduced the breach cost by an average of $3,600,000 of values. So these are like numbers behind the best practices you follow. But let's go back to the what is the actual essence of well-architected framework, right? Well-architected framework, it may looks like very theoretical, but in a nutshell, it's a set of best practices to me, right? These are the best the guardrails for your operation management on cloud or cloud business. These set of best practices guidance that speaks to a couple of roles, especially in every organizations, right? Either it's a solution architects or engineering managers or maybe a lead engineers who manage the cloud business. So how do you architect for cloud, right? So are you carrying or constrained by on-premises assumptions? There are so many resources. You may not be knowing where to start and how to know I have done something wrong in the cloud business, cloud deployment as of now I have today. Am I ready to go into the production? So are my teams following best practices, right? These are the questions, the general questions you'll be facing when you are entering into the cloud, right? So do you have an informed or suggested approaches or a number-based metrics to answer all these questions? May not be, right? But well-architected framework definitely will help you to optimize the workloads for success, and then it builds the confidence across all workload deployments and operations against, right? And also it gives an actionable insights, maybe when you click on that, it will give you a detailed description about how to achieve certain things. Let's say how to achieve the end to bring your keys for an encryption kind of thing. And also it will give you the analyze the performance gap in your application deployment and also give the scope for improvement. And also it will help you to focus on optimization of your efforts. Now you have some idea about the fundamental ideas of well architected, I believe. Let's say what are its guiding principles. If you look at the screen here, there are 5 lenses or 5 pillars of well architected framework of WAF. And the first one starts with cost optimization. Of course, every customers I see, they want to leverage the cost optimization or the schemes or a subscription goodies, whatever the cloud provider provides today. And also they look at in a very strategical angle, like what is the return of investment by taking or maintaining certain things on Azure or in a cloud business, right? So the second one is operational excellence. This is a never-ending one. Always you will find there is a better way to do something. So it's like you have to do it in an iterative way to reach this excellence in this operation management. Performance, efficiency, reliability, it's both are kind of interlinked. So we'll see all these pillars in detail. And also last but not least, the security is also part of this pillars. The first one is cost optimization. So trust me, I'm into this business, a cloud business or a solution architect business for the last 7 years with Microsoft. Not even a single conversation has ended without the cost discussion or a security discussion, right? The both are in the two end of the spectrum, but always they'll start with the cost discussion or they'll be ending with the discussion with the cost wise, right? So are you a team, are you aware of the cloud cost spendings? Do you have a budget about how much you will be spending in the next 6 months or 12 months? So all this thing has to be in a number-based driven approach, right? Not with an over provisioned, which we had seen like 28% over provisioned by most of the customers today. Do you have certain alerts enabled? Do you have the proper tagging of all the resources so that you can look at the billing and then see where the maximum spendings are going on, right? And there are some advantages from the Azure side as well, right? So let's say this Azure hybrid benefit, which means that you can bring your own licenses from your on-premises to the Azure side, which actually significantly reduces the cost from in the range of 40 to 50%. There is a reserved instances available for you to take the reserved instances for 1 year, 3 year, or 5 years kind of thing. And also there is a Spark instances also available with Azure Batch, or maybe in the AKS clusters you can leverage for your low priority workloads. So definitely you should be aware of how to eliminate the cloud waste, right? So many times we run the POCs and then let's say just leave it just like that over a weekend. By Monday morning you come back and then see that there is overage charged for you during those unused time as well, right? So do you have the mechanism or a policy to shut down those unused resources? Do you have the scripts to just run it and then see is there any orphaned managed disk lying in your subscription? Also, do you have the idea about how to auto scale or auto scale down your application or auto shut down? So these are all like a best practices kind of thing. So we'll definitely look at it in the a bigger way going forward. So when you are talking about cost optimization, definitely see the first leg is always for the customers, like lift and shift. Once they have a comfortness over lift and shift, and then slowly they'll see the operation cost wise it's going to be unmanageable. So they'll look at how to optimize the cost by checking some of those managed services from Azure, or maybe the PaaS services what I'm talking here. Then they'll look at automation kind of capabilities to leverage certain or avoid the manual intervention or time delay involved there. Let's look at some of the demos which I prepared for you. And the first one is Azure Advisor. So if you are watching now, you could also go to the Azure portal and then see Azure Advisor. I'm going to my Azure portal. In the Azure portal, if I say Advisor, you will see in the top Advisor coming for me. Again, the Azure Advisor has been designed in a way that it can have the visibility to these file lenses, or bucket these signals into file lenses, right? Again, the cost, security, reliability, operation excellence, and performance. This is what the pillars of well-architected framework. So when I see the first one, it says that there is a one recommendation coming from my subscription. See, currently I have a around 32 subscription. I can go and enable for all the subscription and then enable it and see, but it will take some time. So when I see the recommendations, right? So let's say when I click on this cost and then look for this recommendation, it clearly identifies there is a gap or maybe the over provision kind of item, right? The first one, it says that the right size or down the underutilized virtual machines, right? So either I can take an action by quick fix, or maybe click on the hyperlink to know better about it. And then there are 11 resources are getting impacted by that. Then potential earnings by this by taking this action would be around $2,000 of it's a good money, right? Let me go back to the same screen. So if you are new to Azure, and or maybe if you are not aware of this Azure Advisor, please take a look at it, run it in your workloads. You'll get a bunch of recommendation and also the scores coming in top of it, right? So there is something like Azure Advisor score. So currently its score says that I am at 90%. And also the 5 pillars, each one has got the score. If you are in a less than 70 or 80, please take a look at that the gaps and recommendation what is given to you, so that you can boost up the score by implementing some of the best practices or recommendations prescribed here. And so we'll come back to the same this pillars one after the other, and then see what is next now. Let me go back to the screen. The second one is the cost management. The cost management is under the subscription also, under the Azure subscription. And there is a PowerPoint template which we will see together now. Go back here and then say cost management and billing. in the left side there is a cost management in the blade. So when I click on the cost management, it'll show you that what is my cloud spending today. This is I have around 30 plus subscription, so I have to pick the right subscription. Anyway, this is good enough. So I'll leave you with an idea. This is all like just click through reports kind of thing. You can take time and go through each of it. And in the cost management has got a bunch of recommendation and also the budget alerts which you can set it up. So if you are managing multiple subscription inside your company, strongly recommend this cost management as one of the main thing to look at it. There's another one. Actually, there's a report available for you today. Azure Cost Management, Power BI App Source. So it is already documented very well. If you follow my screen, there is a documentation talking about how if you're an enterprise customers today, it's only for EA customers. So if you have an EA agreement with Microsoft, there is a Power BI report given to you. So that if you enroll all these details, then it will nicely tell you how much a day per day consumption, and also the reserved instances, shared reserved instances, and also the single reserved instances consumption detail. So so, I mean, these links are already available in this PPT, so that you can take a look at it, right? So let's move on. So we look at the pricing calculator. So sometime we'll let me go to the Azure pricing calculator. I've seen many times customers overlooking the pricing calculator details. So I recommend strongly to take a look at pricing calculator for any of the services which you are in doubt, right? So let's say I want to make sure that the Azure services which I'm looking at, let's say Azure Advisor. I had a doubt about Azure Advisor whether it is charged for me or not. So when I go back, when I scroll down to the Azure Advisor, it's clearly mentioned there is no charges to use the Azure Advisor. Similarly, I want to know that AKS has got any SLA for me, so that I can have a SLA promise to my end customer. So as you know that the master nodes in AKS or the API servers in AKS comes by default with no SLA, because there is no charge for you, and it's free of cost for you for hosting the API servers, whereas the worker nodes are charged. But in case if you are promising SLA to your end customer for the API server as well, then you may have to take the SLA here, right? So purchase the additional SLA, uptime SLA for number of clusters you have it in AKS. So by this, actually you get a complete end-to-end SLA. Let's say there's an SLA, uptime SLA for your API server, and also the individual node SLA from the VM scale set side. So it's always pay attention to the Azure pricing calculator. So you will find a lot of insights about the way to optimize your cost. And we saw about the cost management, Azure Advisor. We saw Azure Advisor also. I think we have covered that. It's always gives a recommendation and an easier way to, some of the things can be quick fix there only. By there's an icon overlay. It shows that quick fix, right? When you click on that quick fix, it will automatically take you to the deep link where you can actually take an action in the respective blade, or most of the time it will take you to the external documentation phase where you can look in detail. And then the fourth point is about the performance recommendation for AKS. This is one of the important thing. Sometime in the performance side, let's say Azure Advisor, many times we'll be busy working with some of those application going into the AKS kind of orchestration tool, where we'll overlook some of those announcements we make around the retired services or out of support versions, right? So the AKS clearly mentioned or highlight us that and if you look at, let me enable this zooming. It tells me there is an unsupported Kubernetes version is detected. So I mean it goes on and on, right? So currently maybe only one deduction, only one alerts I'm getting from the Azure Advisor for the Kubernetes. But if you have more than one, you can also connect your custom application to your to the Azure Advisor REST API, so that these alerts can be, or this recommendations, or this kind of recommendations can be shown or pulled outside of your Azure portal also. So just say you have a IT management solution where you want to integrate this Azure Advisor alerts directly into your application. It's possible. The Azure Advisor REST API is what we have it, so I recommend to take a look at it. That's a 6th point. Advisor score we saw, and then Power BI report. Take a look at it. aks.ms cost management slash ACM app. So it's a brilliant tool. I ran it. It worked awesomely without any effort, because there are like 6 or 7 reports already prepared for you, day-wise reports and RI reports and all this thing. I'm sure the most frequently used reports already covered there. And then 8th one is the Azure Compute Decision Tree. If you are coming new to Azure, or if you're already having certain workload on Azure, this is something which I keep sharing with my ISV partners as well, right? So if you go to this compute decision tree, it is clearly described the journey of how you can actually navigate if you're starting from top to bottom, right? There are multiple services on the right side, whether you are suitable for VM workload, whether your application is suitable to run it on VMs or Azure Batch or app services or functions. It goes on and on. Then towards the bottom you will see all the managed services like app services, AKS, and also the app services containers and service fabric kind of thing. And this is also an excellent place where you can actually get to your team or yourself comfortable on when to use what, and the branches will help you to decide the best suitable approaches on Azure. Azure policy is again a very good and also underutilized feature in Azure. So I'll talk about this Azure policy in a bit now. So Azure policy lets you define some of those policies or enforce some of the policies of policies on your development group. Let's say I want to make sure my developers in my team are allowed to create only certain SKUs of VMs, right? In Azure policy, that's possible. And also I want to make sure that when there is a public IP created, I want to make sure that public IP get disposed of when nobody's using that. All these things can be pushed from Azure policy, and also apply these policies on your subscription on resource groups. The 10th point is about Azure VM pricing across the regions. It is very important. How do I know that which VM, because there are like 60 plus regions in the world, Azure is there. In India, we have 3 regions where Azure is there. I want to quickly look at it, which region in India offers me a best or cheapest VMs, right? It's so difficult to compare all these things. So I have a link, azureprice.net. By the way, it's not a Microsoft link, but I found it very useful. So I'm thinking like it's worth to share it here. So when you are planning your budget, so always make sure that the available regions are price or optimized in a way that you can actually go and leverage that pricing, cost. So some of them, there are 43% of 43% of the cost is more than that lower one. So it's surprising, so in India, the central India is the cheaper than the other 2 regions. So leverage the central India over South India or West India. All right, so let's move on. And coming back to the next WAF pillar, operation excellence, right? So moving just your resource to the cloud, or moving your on-premise resources to the cloud, maybe taking your advantage, maybe taking only the advantage of cloud in a small portion. But when you have a technical capabilities, you can improve the operational capabilities as well by having DevOps maturity and also optimization of, operations. You can perform the operations as code through either it's a Helm chart or maybe the Ansible scripts or a simple shell scripts, or also maybe a Terraform kind of a automation, a code. And you should be also having a plan to have a clear CI/CD pipeline defined, so that you can iteratively make changes or frequent changes in your deployments, and also you should be having a way to roll back. And then third one is about the deployments. You should be always anticipating failure for your deployments, and also have a plan to automatically get back to the previous working mode. And how do you refine the how do you define the monitoring criteria, right? So you'll be having plenty of applications running within your subscription, and you need a central dashboard kind of a place where you have to look at what is happening with each of these VMs, or what is happening with this an application at a high level, right? The Azure Monitor is what we strongly recommend. Same like Azure Advisor, the Azure Monitor has got a bunch of app insights kind of alerts or application insights, or the way to monitor your application with the log agent or log analytics, so that you can get a high level view of those application health of those application. The last one is about what is happening with the process wise, and also the cadence of your release, or all this thing can be automated on have it in a very nicer way to attain the operational excellence. The third pillar is about the performance efficiency, and you should be always think about how can I achieve the maximum performance of what I'm paid for, right? So imagine that a news stories was just published about one of your organization recent product announcements, right? The additional publicity from the social media or a news story will definitely bring in large influx of traffic to your website, right? So will you be able to handle such a sudden influx of traffic? Are going to whether it's going to be unresponsive, or sometime 404 like kind of a Indian Railway website sometime because very weirdly at 11 a.m., right? Do you still going to provide such experience, or what? So under this performance efficiency pillar, you will be looking at all the basic principles of ensuring how your application can perform or behave during such unexpected scaling or uh, uh, optimization techniques which you can readily use it. So the first one is about design for scaling. So as you move it to the cloud, you should be think about how your application horizontally scaled, right? The vertical scaling is easy when you are moving left and shift, but horizontal scaling is what the little trickiest, and also the most uh, satisfied thing which you will get it from cloud provider, any cloud provider today. The second one, how you can actually optimize your network performance, right? So you can avoid certain bottlenecks on your web server by moving those static contents to CDN, or using the express circuits to have the end-to-end connectivity from your on-premise to the cloud without going to the public internet, all possible. And also you can also have a DNS based load balancer to balance your load efficiently, and also route and pick up the efficient route to put the traffic to and fro. And the third one is about how do you optimize the storage performance, right? So you have multiple options to choose from, VMs with multiple options to choose for the storage needs. Let's say there are SSDs, and the premium SSDs are there. You should be aware of which particular SKUs of VMs can have the premium SSDs, and if it requires, you may have to have a kind of a caching layer in between your application and database, so that you can avoid the frequent frequently hitting your database. The third one is again the Azure Monitor. How do you monitor your performance end to end? Do you have a network watcher, or do you aware of some kind of insights or a log analytics kind of a tool to monitor your performance end to end. So this monitor performance it actually talking about your application performance, right? So we have something like application insights or Azure app insights. So there are two ways you can enable it today. One is non-intrusive way, and then another one is intrusive way. In a non-intrusive way, just enable this or install this application insights in your IIS server or web server without any code change. It will be able to pump the log out of your web server to the centralized storage account. The second one is in an intrusive way, using the SDKs and libraries, you can actually spread this log statements across your microservices or applications. So this will start emitting the log to the centralized place. With that, we'll move to the reliability, and then reliability is the fourth pillar, which is again it's clearly defined requirements. You have to define a requirements when you talk about reliability, right? So what is your HA requirements today? Some customers we see, I'm okay with single VMs as long as my application is up and running, but suddenly there is something has happened to the VM, then they'll file a ticket. Then there's a Microsoft recommendation to have at least 2 VMs for high availability of 99.99, something like that, right? So if you are still running on a single VM, then Azure is the only provider today provides this 99.95 for 99.95 for a premium SSD disk, right? So you have to know what is your HA requirements, and then what is the SLA you are promising to your end customer in a detail, so that you can start doing certain things like you can simulate your failures. You have to force failovers of our drills kind of thing. You can do a drill fail, this is all possible, right? So you can, suppose you have an Azure storage account, you want to perform a drill, failover drill, you can click on a button, the failover will happen to the next region. And how do you deploy consistently to your application? Do you have capabilities to deploy consistently, kind of either blue-green setup kind of thing, or maybe the way to roll back and all this thing, right? And then monitor health, as we saw. By the way, all these things are available under Azure Advisor. So these are like individual points which we are going to talk about or covered in the portal. Let me look at it. How much time we have? Okay, this is one thing. Some people think availability is resiliency. If I have 100% availability, so it means the resiliency. No, that's not true. Availability is not equal to resiliency. Please keep in mind. And then the resiliency, how do you calculate the resiliency of your application? How do you know that? What is your resiliency? Resiliency is equal to your availability by failure. So hope I have covered. Cool. Yeah, let's proceed. What are the recommendation services in Azure for achieving the reliability? You can use the Azure Site Recovery, which would tell you, which will help you to replicate your services from region A to region B, and Azure Backup to have your taking a backup of your critical workloads. And you can also achieve the high availability, or maybe the DR, disaster recovery and backups. All this things can be achieved. And you can use the Azure Traffic Manager for achieving this high availability kind of scenarios, or application gateway for distributing the traffic, also Azure Load Balancer. And also you can use some of those PaaS components which is already coming with high availability, right? And let's say there is a Azure Blob Storage. It's actually 3 copies are maintained to provide you the SLA. And so are you aware of how to back up your VMs, right? These are some of those basic questions which keeps coming up again and again when you go through this framework. Are you comfortable with how do you back up and restoring your VMs? And I'm sure that the PaaS components will have an easy way to restore or backup it, but are you comfortable of doing your infrastructure as a service restore? And some of those recommendation pattern for application side, when you talk about reliability, there are 2 types of reliability. One is the platform side reliability, which is on Azure side, and which is always a constant evolving thing. which you may not to worry about it too much. But on the application side, the reliability falls reliability definitely would have to have some of these patterns, like there is a smart retry or a retry patterns, and the circuit breaker patterns, and also the throttling patterns, queue based level load distribution, where you want to avoid the front end hitting the backend server when there is a sudden spike in the traffic. So you want to decouple this front end and back end by introducing the queues in the middle, so that it works in a different speed, right? So the easy way to apply these patterns, so the documentations are very clear, and also there are a set of codes or samples also there. And the third point, throttling, which is my favorite. So I had seen multiple customers deploying an API, and then finally they see that when they go for a production and the multiple customers onboarded, and there will be always one customer's noisy neighbors, one customer's making the maximum throttling. So the easy way to avoid these things, introduce the API management in middle, so that your throttling can be limited, or maybe you can ration the traffic for each of these customers. And I had this links already opened, but I do not want to go through this documentation, but highly encourage to take time and then check these retry patterns in the left side, and there is a queue-based load leveling and all these things in a detail. And in the interest of time, let me proceed. Okay, this is an interesting use case which we are going to discuss now. Assume that this is your application today, and there is a front end. Let me take the laser pointer to point. There is a front end .NET application. It's running on a VMs, and then some backend. The backend is for this AKS service, right? Azure Kubernetes services got multiple microservices, the coupons, the cart, profile, products, and so on. And also there is a mobile for front end, which is also hosted in the Azure Kubernetes service. There is a reward app, which is a separate VMs or app services kind of thing. There is a database, SQL DB, and overall this seems to be good. But all I'm asking is do you think that let me switch off this guy. Now the challenge or the task for you is to identify the problem in this architecture, right? So in a high level, it seems to be fairly decent or reasonable architecture, but you should always think, or think from a point of think from a failure point, right? So we call it as a single point failure, right? So what happens to the ASP.NET application goes down, right? Am I running in two regions, active? Am I having the Azure Traffic Manager to maintain the availability between two deployments, right? There's an AK services, which is again running with multiple microservices. How do I know that what is actually going wrong in this one of these microservices, or maybe the out of memory exceptions coming from one of the pod? Am I having the monitoring enabled, or maybe a Prometheus or a Datadog kind of application, which is actually enabling for me or helping me to look at the distributed logging, right? And then there is a Cosmos database. Cosmos database is a good thing. It comes with a multi-master, multi-region deployment, so it's easy to spread within multiple regions. But what about the other services like Azure SQL DB or Logic Apps? See, each of these applications you have to think about what if happens to that particular services, right? You always look at it from a failure or a design for failure perspective, so that you will be able to understand the bigger picture of avoiding that failure. And I want to stop you here with a front door demo, and then we look at it how you can actually have a front door as an services between two of your websites deployed in central India and South India. So I'm going to stop one of the application and still show that these loads are distributed to one of those available endpoints. All right, let's see how you can actually bring in resiliency to your existing application without any code change, right? So I have a two application, the Fancy Shop 1 and then Fancy Shop 2. Let me close the unused tabs. Great. And both these applications are deployed in different regions. So Fancy Shop 1 has been deployed in Central India. Let's confirm. Right. You can see it's in Central India, and this is the URL, Fancy Shop 1 .azurewebsites.net. It is coming from Central India. Perfect. I have another website which is also running in the Azure App Services, but in a different region. It is in South India, right? So what happens if I kill one of this application today, right? So if it is simply deployed in a single VMs or a single region, the whole application will go down, right? So these are like individual unique URLs. So Fancy Shop 1, Fancy Shop 2. But if I want to bring in resiliency to this application and also leverage the Microsoft backbone, then Azure Front Door is in a service which is actually helps you to global entry for your application, which boost your performance by offloading your web traffic over Microsoft network, right? So let me show you a Front Door. If you are not aware of what is Front Door, then take a look at it. This Front Door would be fantastic services, which it acts like your web application firewall, where else it gonna route the traffic based on the algorithmic path, and TLS termination also it can do, SSLS termination it can do. There are like 7 or 8 features it can do, but here in this demo, what I have done, and I have used the Front Door to have the front domain front ends, which is actually Front Door domain name. And then there is a backend pool, which is our backend pool. Let's open it one by one and then show. This is my Front Door URL, fancyshop.azurefd.net, which has got the backend pool. If you look at the backend pool, this backend pool has got those two IPs, two websites I have. No, this is like Fancy Shop 1, Fancy Shop 2, and then all these are like default settings. You can change it if you want to change anything. And what is the routing rules? The routing rules are nothing but what is the page I have to look back or do the health probe in the backend, right? So again, there are like the bunch of things, but I have taken a default one. So what happens now? So when I go and access this fancy Front Door application, it will actually put the traffic to the nearest location. So if you look at here, I'm accessing the fancy shop dot AzureFD.net. So if you have a application which is actually having a heavy deployment web application, which you want to boost the performance of loading and other thing, you can offload all the traffic on Microsoft Edge network by taking the Front Door without any code change or any configuration change in the application side. So if you look at here, it is actually showing as a South India. I keep refreshing, but it still shows the South India, right? So I'm going to kill one of those deployments. Let's say the Central India. This is the South India region where I have deployed, and Front Door is also pointing because it is closer to my location, Bangalore. So I'm going to stop this application. So once if I stop this, and the Front Door automatically, by looking at the health probe, right, it will route the traffic to the Central India. So if I go back to the Front Door configuration, you will see the health probe signals are properly configured, and also every 5 seconds the both Fancy Shop 1 and Fancy Shop 2 application will be sending those health probe signals to the Front Door, and then Front Door will look at which one is active, alive, and then where to route the traffic. Since I have killed one of the servers, or we are simulating the failures here, I'm sure that now the traffic should be going back to the another available region, and this diversion would take maybe 5 to 10 seconds. Now if I go back to the same front door URL and then click refresh, I should see that traffic going to the central India. Now you can see, which means that the front door can help you to avoid a single point of failure of your web deployment without any code change or configuration change. I love the service because I see customers also loving in a greater way, because it is perfectly work, and also it can improve your pocket delivery or web pockets delivery by taking pushing all the traffic over Microsoft networks. All right, let's go to the second one now. Continuing, let's say these are the top 10 design principles for Azure applications. So each of them has got a very good detail in depth. These are all the hyperlinks, and there is a URL in the bottom, right? So the first one is always designed for self-healing, right? So when there is an application is not able to reach certain services, right? So we have a retry pattern. It should be an exponential retry, otherwise it's going to throttle the destination service. So we should always try to recover from the failures. Either it could be in a very efficient try catch blocks, or maybe the way you handle the recovery. It's all up to your developer creativity. Make all things redundant. So it's again which we talked about, the single point failure, right? So either you two deployments, active or active passive, or maybe 70-30 ratio, whatever, but try to avoid the single point failure. Be it a VMs or be it PaaS services, right? So minimize coordination between two services by introducing the either the event hub, or maybe the event grid, or maybe the blobs or queues, so that basically your sender may not be affected by the receiver's unavailability, right? So just make it as decouple it in a way that both of them can work independently without having any tight couplings. And then the fourth one is a design to scale out. Definitely should be which we discussed earlier also. Your application should be designed in a way that it can horizontally scale and leverage the cloud benefits. And then the partition around limits. This is again a big topic to cover. How do you horizontally shard your database, right? How do you limit your certain things? Let's say your outbound connectivity from a network, or NAT translation should happen through force the NAT translation to a particular load balancer and other thing. By the way, as you know that the cloud comes with, any cloud provider would do the same thing, right? If you are picking something in the cloud, whether it's a compute network or storage, each one has got the limitation. Be it storage, which comes with some certain IOPS limitations. So you should be aware of what you are consuming and what is the upper limit for each of these services. And design for operations. Definitely when there is an event happens, or when there is an outage happens, how your operation team is going to bring back that environment in another region. So this is again a big topic. I would encourage to go through code way to bring the infrastructure back, or roll back and all of the thing. Use as much as managed services. It's been recommended, instead of you maintain the VMs, take the backups, or protect the VMs using the encryption at rest, disk, and all this kind of thing. So rely on the PaaS services and offload all the risk to the PaaS provider, so that you can focus on the other outer part. And use the best data store for the job. You have RDBMS database, you have NoSQL, you should be knowing which one to be used, and you can also have a polyglot database if it required. Design for evolution. It's again make it in an iterative way. Start with small things, and then as you know that the cloud, as I mentioned, the cloud is the moving target. You have to iteratively keep evolve your design, so that you will continue the innovation by adding the outer layers of either the GitHub Actions, or maybe the cognitive services. All can be brought in when there is a need. Always the last one, it's a very important. Build for the need of business. It's a very important. Don't do the resume driven business development. and always look for the business. If it is the business, if your business doesn't need the AKS kind of a Kubernetes kind of a orchestration tool, then don't go for it, right? Otherwise you will not able to manage the Kubernetes cluster on your own if you do not have such problems in your business, so or a need for that. So there are smaller services like Azure App Services can also greatly deliver the 99.9 of SLA. Instead, don't take the AKS, which is overkill if there is no business need for that. And there is it's a very nice link to spend time on each on this. Let me proceed in the interest of time. This is the last pillar, the security. It's a zero trust model. Zero trust model has been coined by Gartner. It means that don't assume the trust, and it's very valid, right? So I'm the employee of certain organization, but don't assume that the employee will be always having this credential or whatever. So you always revalidate the assumption by questioning the employee's login or a device using the multi-factor authentication, or you can provide them privilege to use the single sign-on if they are having the multiple third-party vendors websites are used. Use the RBAC efficiently, and PIM and SP service principal managed identities, MIs, and it goes on and on. MIs, managed identities, are not it's a kind of one of the underdog in Azure. Many people have not seen, many people have not considered or used, but I highly recommend managed identities. And application security is again there's no end for it, right? So application side of security, you can use the Key Vault to protect your application side configurations, or application as an app configuration manager is there. You can use the centralized place where you can store all your configurations, and also use the encryption effectively by enabling the encryption alone. There are companies managed to survive during this ransomware attack, right? So the encryption at rest, encryption at path, whatever, the on the job. Check all these things in detail, because the security itself a big topic, and the Azure Advisor has got all the signals covered in the security. And the network security, application security is also there. And I think we have already seen this demo, so I'm skipping this demo in the interest of time. We'll go to the assessment directly, right? So if you are watching this and you want to quickly take an assessment side by side, then I think you can also start along with me. So this is the assessment URL. You can start saying that Azure WAF assessment. The second URL, this Azure WAF assessment, again it's called as a review here. Always make sure to sign in before you take the assessment. And there are 5 pillars which we have discussed recently, all this time, right? Cost optimization, operational, blah blah. So I'm going to quickly check about this cost optimization assessment of my workload, right? There are 7 questions on the left side for cost optimization. So if you address this question one by one, so you will get the your score for this, the detail what you have mentioned, and also the recommendation for the gaps what you have not addressed. So this has been created in a way that you can come back and then take this assessment every quarter or sometime or something like that, so that you can actually know what is going wrong, or what is going good in your application. So right now I have answered all the 7 recommendation. So now my score is somewhere 52 out of 100, and I want to know what is the gap, like 48% of gap is there. So if I scroll down, you will see the recommendation showing for each of these pillars, right? So so the maximum I had seen, like if I set none for above, none for all this thing, 200 plus recommendations are there. So if you're a newbie to Azure, you are trying to understand the well-architected framework, then highly encouraged to take time to spend all those 200 plus recommendations, right? So this is like 11 recommendation from this guy. There are a bunch of recommendation from each of this. Totally it is 207 recommendation for whole. But this number of recommendation may vary, depends on the score. So I'll leave you with that, so that take your time and then take this assessment. And when you finish this assessment, there is the way to share this with your teammates. You can actually send this email. This is nothing but a kind of a deep link. So this deep link can be saved somewhere in your Jira kind of a task management tool, and then come back or assign your developer to take a look at it. And all these past assessments can be accessed by going back to the assessment page. I had some assessment taken in February 15 and so and so. I want to show one assessment which I had complete zero knowledge, where I have is able to see all the recommendation coming. So this is the deep URL which I had said. So you can actually have this deep URL, deep link, so that whenever you want to come back and then look at it. And this is the one assessment which I randomly mentioned about none of the above for all. Just wanted to know curiously to know how many max recommendation I can see, and also to learn maximum out of it, right? So as I mentioned, it is a 0 out of 100. It's intentionally I put so that I can see all the recommendation coming out of it, right? I do not want to miss anything out of it. So the security has got a maximum of 61, and also followed by reliability. Start with what is relevant for you. I always recommend customers to start with the cost optimization and then go with reliability, and then security also in parallel. So it's a very nice intuitive way to learn also without any gap in your application, without missing any of the best practices in your application deployments. With that, actually, I want to quickly wrap it by okay. So in summary, actually, we discussed in detail about what is well-architected framework and why it is important for you as a cloud architect or a lead engineer or manager of a cloud operation team, and what is Microsoft well-architected framework offers you under these 5 pillars. Each pillar has got a bunch of things to do, and there's a demo we had seen with bits and pieces of tools, because this is like a framework, right? So this framework, a number of things can be clubbed into the framework. There's the reports, readily available reports for cost management, other thing we had seen. And so we had seen about the assessment review and recommendations, and I'm going to leave you with some of the resources for your later references. All of them are in a plain English. It's very easy to learn and also adapt these technologies, and this definitely brings your cloud maturity in your organization for sure. So if you are with a score of 50, and after 3 months time, I'm sure that also you should aim for reaching 70 or 80 by picking those important critical recommendation missing in your applications. And if you want to know, if you want to get this slide, please reach me out to my Twitter handle, where I will post this in the GitHub, so that you can grab all those URLs, and you can also run the same session within your organization. With that, I'll conclude the session. Hope you find informations are useful to you, or quickly actionable. With that, I'll leave you with a note saying that if you have any questions, or if you want to reach out to me, please reach out to me on Twitter. Have a good conference rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.